Agni parthene despina achrande
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Orthodox Logos. My name is Ian Silver and I'm here with my co-host Nathaniel Harmon.
Greetings.
And today we are going to be talking about the life of another Western saint.
One whom I didn't even know about until about 6 hours ago.
And I didn't know about until about
45 minutes ago?
Yeah, about that long ago.
You were today days old when you found out about the venerable Guthlac of Crowland.
Yeah, or as otherwise pronounced, Crowland. I believe there's a few ways depending on who you are. Nathan likes to sound pretentious, and I could care less.
Sir, I would like you to know that I unequivocally resemble that comment.
Resemble?
As opposed to resent. It's a play on words.
Okay.
Clever play on words. Funny, haha. Yes, no, maybe.
Okay, here we go. Welcome back. So yeah, we hope you're enjoying the last few weeks of Great Lent. We're definitely approaching the end of it, but we also have a big part of it coming up soon, which is going to be Holy Week. For you people who don't know what that is, Nathan, what is Holy Week exactly, and why does that play an important role in the end of Great Lent?
So Holy Week is not actually part of Great Lent. Holy Week is a separate thing.
But, I mean, it can be combined.
It begins on the Sunday of the Great Entrance of Christ into Jerusalem, or in the Western world, we would call that Palm Sunday.
Yeah.
And that ushers in one of the strictest fasting periods of the Orthodox calendar, with the possible exception of the first week of Lent, during which, if you are being very, very strict, you only consume food and water on 2 or 3 occasions.
Yeah, clean week, or,
Right.
Typically it's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Some people will follow the rule of eating after.
You get to eat after
sundown.
You get to eat after the pre-sanctified liturgy on Wednesday, and again on Friday, and those are the only 2 times you'll eat or drink during that week.
Yeah.
Which I know there are people who do it in Arizona, but in Arizona that's really, really hard to do.
You mean as far as the heat?
Well, as far as the dryness, like if you live in, say,
for water.
If you live in the Midwest, where you can just kind of acquire hydration through the air, since like 75% of the air is actually water, that's one thing.
It's a little different.
Here, where humidity is called rain, and it only rains for like 13 days out of the year, that's kind of hard.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I am also nowhere near as disciplined or tough as some of the people who do it. I mean, the monastics down at St. Anthony's in Florence, where it regularly gets over 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, and
are pretty good about it, but I am not that
They
good.
rarely, if ever, get rain.
Well, they will during the monsoons, but I mean, I've actually been down there during some freak rainstorms, and it's kind of hilarious when it's like 65 degrees there, and you come down from Flagstaff and you're like, oh, this is really, really nice weather. It's 65 degrees. It's t-shirt and shorts weather. Shame I can't wear a t-shirt or shorts here. But all the monks and all the other pilgrims, or just people who live there, are in puffies and like insulated pants, and it's really hilarious to watch.
So
the one time that I feel like I've got a stronger constitution than the monks.
When you're like, I wish I could.
I can deal with cold, and by that I mean I can deal with what you think is cold, and to me is like a nice summer day.
Yeah. So we just released on Patreon our video of Disney coming out of the closet, and I think we titled that.
We actually got taken down for saying Disney's gay.
Yeah, they didn't let it upload, and then they removed it from my personal Google Drive. So instead of saying Disney is gay, I changed it to It's a Gay World After All, which I guess
is
it's
not entirely inaccurate.
But I guess
still.
that's fine because that's what they want. So yeah, make sure to check that out. Become a Patreon member. There's going to be a lot of exclusive content on there. I'm going to talk to our friend Dawkin about possibly doing some short stories. Maybe Nathan will write some stuff. Isaac, Traditionalist Project, maybe he'll get on board. I mean, of course, that means I'll have to pay these people as
What do
well.
you mean, these people?
What do you mean, you people?
What do you mean, you people?
I mean, you people.
I mean, I would say that you mean writers, but you write poetry.
Barely.
So you're in that camp?
And moving on from me writing poetry, which is quite embarrassing. But no, I've been writing a little bit more, trying to get some inspiration back and have a few other outlets besides just doing these podcasts. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. But with all that being said, check out the Patreon. There's going to be some stuff on there that will be exclusive just to it. I feel like the Disney thing should stay on Patreon. I'm not sure if it'll demonetize us on YouTube or get us deplatformed in a way, which I'm not necessarily like scared of or opposed to happening. It's a lot of hard work to get where we're at, and we're kind of just taking off, so to speak. So I don't know. We'll see where things go, but yeah. Nathan, anything you want to say before we dive into the life of Guthlac?
So Ian, as you guys know, has just discovered the textual works of J.R. Tolkien. And as a result of that, he's super jazzed about a lot of the stuff he's discovering. So he and I, and maybe Isaac, if we can get him on board or get the schedule squared away, are going to try to record an episode here in the near future that is a discussion on the poem of Beren and Luthien.
Yeah, beautiful poem.
So that, for anyone who's wondering, is not going to be the entire Lay of Luthien, which is like, I want to say it's over 100 pages.
Yeah, it's long.
We're just going to do the one that you find in the text of the Fellowship of the Ring that Aragorn sings. So we'll talk about that. We will maybe play the audio version of that J.R. Tolkien actually recorded, which is pretty cool. And maybe there's a couple of different musical versions of it that are pretty awesome. There's obviously one of what, I'm a huge fan of the Clamavi de Profundis one because I prefer that style of music. But we'll talk about that and showcase some of that and talk about what we like, what we dislike. So if you want to be involved in that and get to hear it and maybe even get to submit some questions with regard to various aspects of the poem, jump on Patreon and you'll get to have some more interaction with us if that's something that you really, really want. If you're that insane that you want to have closer interactions with us.
We beg you for your money. Help us, please. We need help. No. But I think it's just a good way to help support artists in general. Even when I was into photography more, there was a lot of people on there who would do exclusive stuff on there. It's just a way to help out. Here, you looking for that?
I was going to say, did you take my pipe tool?
Yes. So yeah. And then Nathan, will you hand me the beard oil, please? Let's see if it'll actually focus this time. No. But yeah, I got to fix that. The beard oil is also available, called Monk's Beard. And
smells good.
I just gave some to Nathan. We tried to be a little light on the frankincense because some people don't like scented. And it kind of made it easier for us to choose between doing a scented beard face oil and a non-scented. But check that out. All the orders have shipped, like I said, besides Canada and Australia. Those are kind of a process, but yeah, make sure to order that. I might switch it over to being just US shipping on most items. Help support. It's made by me and my bride. And also there's some other stuff coming soon. She's working on some rosaries and
She's doing some prayer ropes too, right?
Yeah, prayer bracelets. But we did get the blessing. She got a blessing to change the name of her company. So be looking out for that. It's going to be Theosis. And then also shout out to Ian. I haven't talked to you about this, but your Venmo handle really inspired her. She's going to do her like, I don't know what they're called, but like lotions and stuff like that. And it's going to be under the name Honey and Locusts.
Her hygiene products.
Yeah. So yeah. But anyway, little housekeeping. Make sure to like, subscribe, share this with your friends and family. And let's go ahead and get into this. So, Venerable Guthlac of Crowland, who is commemorated on April 11th and also the 24th, which this year happens to
The
be
day after Pascha, I believe, because Pascha's on the 23rd, right?
24th is the resurrection,
Oh, okay.
which is my birthday, which me and Sierra were trying to figure out how long until that happens again. And it's quite a long time,
Like dead long time or gray hair long time?
like a very, very long time. So I'm not even sure if it will happen again. But yeah, this year is kind of special for me. It'll be my first Pascha, and it falls on my birthday. So yeah, that being said, I was just looking at the audio because it looks like it's kind of spiking a lot. Guess we'll see, right?
Just so.
So St. Guthlac of Crowland, or Crowland, is one of the greatest hermit saints of the early English church and is considered to be the most popular pre-Norman English saint after St. Cuthbert. And if you guys know anything about St. Cuthbert, that's also a beautiful, beautiful story of another amazing saint as well. Orthodox Christians call him the English St. Anthony the Great. Crowland Abbey Church, situated in the quiet village of Crowland in Lincolnshire, close to the Cambridgeshire border in the district known as the Fens. The site of ascetic life of Guthlac attracts Orthodox and other Christian pilgrims every year. The Fens is a low, flat area of parts of present-day Lincolnshire, Cambridgeshire, and Norfolk, formerly well known as a dominantly marshy region, though the swampland was reclaimed chiefly from the 17th to 19th century. As is generally known, numerous desert fathers in ancient times, especially in Egypt, lived in deserts. However, the hermits of the British Isles chose small islands, shores, cliffs, and sometimes forests, mountains, and hills as their quote-unquote deserts, as Britain does not have natural deserts, if any of you are familiar with the landscape over there. Guthlac was...
So, if I may pause for
Yeah,
a moment.
please.
We've talked in previous episodes about the importance of saints reclaiming territory from demons and from pagan gods.
Yeah, with St. Patrick specifically.
Right.
And
Specifically with St. Patrick and I believe with St. Winifred as well.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to note here that the locale that St. Guthlac chose is not just one that is remote and impassable. To the Celtic religious praxis, bogs are liminal spaces, right? So that's where sacrifices are performed. That's where you go to meet gods. For anyone who doubts me, look at the history of the excavation of so-called bog men and bog artifacts, right? Those are places where people made sacrifice to pagan deities. You would throw swords or various other treasures or people into the bogs as a sacrifice to these pagan deities. So Guthlac is going to war when he settles here to live as an ascetic and to intercede for the salvation of his country and his countrymen. He is going to the places that are sacred to the pagan deities.
yeah, reclaiming them from the
Right.
snakes, so to speak.
So to speak, yeah.
Yeah. Good little side note. But yeah, they don't have desert, so to speak. So Guthlac was unique even for English saints, as he preferred to live as a hermit, surrounded by dangerous and impassable bogs, as we mentioned, in swamps from all sides. His spiritual labors and experiences in all respects resembled the life of the venerable monks of the Egyptian deserts. Like they mentioned, Saint Anthony the Great, who is another wonderful, wonderful saint. We'll probably end up speaking on him. And also the monastery here in Florence, Arizona is, named after or
Dedicated to St. Anthony.
dedicated to Saint Anthony. The earliest and most reliable life of Guthlac was written by the monk Felix some 20 years after the saint's repose. By the grace of God, this Latin life survives to this day. Apart from this life, 2 other vernacular versions were later written in Old English, in verse and prose. And finally, in the British Library, there is a surviving medieval gem called the Guthlac Roll, which is an illustrated story of his life in the form of 18th beautiful roundels, which are circular designs. St. Guthlac was born in the early English kingdom of Mercia in a noble family related to the royal house of Mercia. Approximately at the time, the new ruler of Mercia was the pious King Ethelred, who reigned for almost 30 years, contributed to founding many monasteries, and himself ended his days as a simple monk. After his repose, he was venerated as a saint at Bardney in Lincolnshire. Guthlac's father was named Pendwald, and his mother's name was Tet. His parents had at least one more child besides Guthlac, a daughter named Pega. Pega was a virgin and anchoress, and after her repose was also venerated as a saint. We will talk more of her later, as they mention in this article. The birth of the great hermit Guthlac was accompanied by marvelous miracles. The parents and all the relatives felt that this child would surely become a man great in the eyes of God and in the eyes of men. Guthlac was an obedient boy. He avoided all the usual childish games and pranks or idle talks, as one should. He grew into a very clear adolescent. His face always shone with a particular spiritual joy. He was innocent in all his activities. However, with time, his temper changed very radically. He became more and more inspired by deeds of contemporary heroes and those of the old times. A sort of belligerent mood awoke inside of him. It was said that at that time Guthlac for some time served in the Mercian army. At the age of 15, Guthlac formed his own gang, and together with other youths gave himself up to banditry, robbery, bloody raids on neighboring settlements, and other horrible crimes.
He and his band then became a real plague for the surrounding districts and their population. He spent about 9 years in such grave crimes and brigandage until one day he suddenly recollected the Lord, and a very strong awe and fear of God appeared in his heart. As was the case with many other former thieves who, realizing their way of life, repented and served the Lord and people for the rest of their lives, Guthlac was spiritually transformed and confessed all his previous sins to God and firmly decided to be his faithful and ardent servant. He gave back all his loot to the people and called upon his gang members to do the same. After that, following the Lord's revelation, Guthlac came to the double monastery of Repton in the present-day county Derbyshire, which was in Mercia. He wished to start serving Christ as a monk there.
And here we see an image of the Church of St. Wystan in Repton, Derbyshire, which is the one that they're
discussing.
They're speaking of.
At that time, in the monastic house, it was ruled by Abbess Aelfrith. Guthlac was tonsured and lived for around 2 years in that monastery. There was the burial place of many members of the Mercian royal family. It existed for many years afterwards and was connected with several other important saints. The Abbey Church of St. Wystan, with its early English crypt and abbey ruins in the village of Repton, are a site of pilgrimage to this day. Guthlac lived in Repton in extreme abstinence. First, the brethren were not very friendly with him, because he totally refused any alcohol. But then, seeing his genuine ascetic life, love, and kindness, they became his close spiritual friends. In Repton, Guthlac soon learned the whole Psalter by heart. He studied the gospel and teachings of the Holy Fathers very thoroughly and zealously practiced everything he found in their instruction. Once he read the lives of the Egyptian desert fathers, he began to have a strong and fervent desire to imitate their way of life in order to be closer to Christ, whom he loved most of all. So the saint resolved to live alone in the wilderness, somewhere in the back of beyond. With the blessing of the holy elders, the ascetic began to search for such a place. He found some local people in the fens, and one of them, named Tatwin, showed him a small and uninhabited island right in the middle of this extremely swampy region. He also told Guthlac that no one had been able to live there because of hordes of evil spirits or demons who dwelt there. Guthlac at once felt that it was his calling to live on that very spot and to struggle with these demons there in the name of the Savior. So at the age of 26, Guthlac settled on this tiny and dangerous island called Crowland. And he stayed there as a true hero, the warrior of Christ, for the remaining 15 years of his life. By divine providence, Guthlac arrived on Crowland on the feast day of the Holy Apostle Bartholomew, and this saint from that time became his patron. The life relates how this apostle of Christ appeared to Guthlac more than once throughout his solitary life in Crowland, several times protecting him from demons, and once even giving him a scourge for use as a defensive weapon against the attacks of the evil one. Guthlac never left his beloved hermitage, though sometimes he had visitors who could reach Crowland by boat, through the narrow way on the river Welland. There was an old tumulus, which is a hill, in Crowland, which had been partly dug out by treasure hunters there, and a large basin with clean water beside it. There Guthlac built a little cell and chapel for himself. The saint wore only animal skins and ate no more than once a day. He had only barley bread as his food and only water for drink. Most of the day he prayed and gave himself up to divine contemplation. The hermit had numerous temptations and harsh tribulations during his life on that island. The wretched spirits vexed him for years until he finally drove them away from the island. It is supposed that there were also attacks made by local Britons who had taken refuge in the fens and who wanted to make Guthlac leave Crowland. The saint usually won his battles against temptation by the sign of the cross, by reading the Psalter, especially Psalm 90, and by petitions for help from his patron saint, Bartholomew. Among his most frequent temptations were despair, the memory of his former sins that would never be forgiven him, and the memory of the outside world. With much courage he struggled with all these thoughts, and every time with the help of God was the winner. Many times angels appeared to him for consolation, and in the final years of his life an angel descended to his cell every night and conversed with him until the morning. Here are several examples from the life of Guthlac, illustrating his warfare with demonic powers. Once 2 demons appeared to him and spoke with the hermit in a very friendly fashion, though flattery and meaningless instructions were seen in their words. By these sly speeches they intended to deceive the hermit and to lead him into self-delusion. They said how they honored his self-denial and hard labors for the sake of divine service. They also recommended him to fast 6 days a week and to relax his fasting and rest more on the 7th day. The saint ignored them, crying to the Lord, imploring him to protect him, and the demons disappeared like smoke.
And I think briefly, the last few paragraphs we read about him, memorizing the Psalter, but even just, as we've said before, like do the little things. You see the sign of the cross, being a source of a weapon to him in a sense. And I think it's really important for us to remember that it's not just something that we do just to do it, but it actually has an effect on the evil spirits and the demons. Right. And also the demons telling him like, oh, you're so good,
Well, that has a lot of, shall we say, parallels in lives of the Desert Fathers in the in Russia, where prelest was something that they struggled with mightily. There's a number of stories that Father Seraphim Rose mentions when he's trying to convince people, or when he's discussing the whole notion of prelest with people. And he says, okay, well, here's this saint who suffered this attack and he fell for it.
Yeah.
He became a saint afterwards, but he fell for it and it caused him many, many issues. It nearly damned him.
And I think we don't even realize the part where they talk about like, oh, you can relax your fast. We don't even see that these little things that happen to us, as Orthodox Christians who are living in the world, speaking from experience, it's like, oh, it's okay if they put cheese on it, or whatever it may be. It's like that. It may not always be an attack from the evil one, but the chances are likely that it's your pride getting in the way, and it's the evil one messing with you, saying, oh, you've been doing really good, it's okay, just have a burger, it's right. Totally fine,
Well, the war's not over till you're dead.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it's interesting to me. This has parallels with many other hagiographies, but the one that's actually coming to mind is Saint Mary of Egypt and Saint Moses the Black.
Saint Moses the Black is, yeah, we'll definitely have to do that.
Dude, his was one of the first hagiographies that I came across that wasn't a specific lecture.
Yeah. And
it was just like, oh yeah, this dude, Saint Moses the Black. And I'm like, well, that's a really curious name. I need to check that out. And I listened to it and I was like, the whole
his past life being like a thug and a pirate.
Well, the one, the quote from his life that sticks out to me, and I think this is the one that sticks out to many people, and this is kind of mentioned in here when he agonizes over his past life, is when he's called to preside over effectively a criminal hearing for another monastic, and he shows up with this huge basket or a bag slung over his shoulder with a hole poked in the bottom. And sand is running out. And he tells the other monastics, you called me here to judge my brother when my own sins run out behind me, even as I come here.
Yeah.
I love that bit. Although I will say, the older I get, I appreciate more the portion of his life when he's martyred, because for many who don't know, St. Moses the Black didn't die a natural death. He was killed. He was killed for his faith. And when that happened, he was an old man, the abbot of his monastery, and a group of bandits were known to be coming towards the monastery. So a bunch of the monks said, "Hey, this is what's going on. What should we do? Do you want us to stay or should we go?" And he says, "Okay, no, you all leave."
I'll stay.
And they say, "Okay, so you're coming with us?" And he says, "No, I was a murderer before I became a Christian. And as our Lord tells us, if you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. I've known this was how I was going to meet my end for a long time." And the monks were all like, "Well, we can't leave then." He said, no, you need to go. So most of them left, but I want to say it was 5 or 6 of them stayed with him.
Yeah, a handful.
And they were all, they wouldn't leave, and they were all martyred. But that's the first time I heard that. I was definitely, shall I say, reduced to tears, because it was just such an impressive display of
repentance
faithfulness,
and
repentance and stoicism in the face of knowing what one's fate's going to be.
Yeah.
Which is something that I think that we in the West tend to lack now.
It's a very modern way of thinking, and not, once again, I don't mean to say this in a a crass way, but it's a very Protestant way of thinking. Like,
I can do more work if I stay alive longer.
Or I've done all these things, but I'm saved. I'm saved now, so I don't need to regard, even if like St. Moses the Black knew, like, this, I knew this day would come.
Well, we all need to be prepared to meet our death. And that's something that St. Moses the Black and many, I will say a lot of Celtic saints, embody in a way that we would do to listen. With all of the madness that's happened over the last couple of years, I'm still struck by a quote that I heard from a Roman Catholic when the Rona and all this madness started, like first couple of weeks of it all. He said, "I want you to imagine a scenario where you know that you can go to Mass, so in our case, the liturgy, and receive the body and blood of Christ. But if you do that you're going to die." And he made the important distinction of saying you're not going to die because you partook of the Eucharist,
like not death by
Right.
holiness.
He's like, but if you go do this thing, if you go fulfill your duty as a Christian and worship God with your brothers and sisters and partake of the Eucharist,
you will be persecuted.
You will die immediately after that happens.
Would you still do it?
Would you still do it? And he kind of, and this Catholic guy said, if you are a Christian, the answer should be, of course, why would I not? What greater way is there to die than in praise of God and in participating in the greatest sacrament? Why would you not want that? And I think that the lives of the saints indicate to us that is something in many ways that we have lost, or at least I won't say lost. It's something that we don't give the appropriate weight to.
Yeah, it's kind of just sits there in the background.
It's like, oh, well, we can do more if we live longer. And it's like, well, maybe
here.
But our role is not to figure out how we can prolong our lives. Our role is to obey God.
Yeah, people get very wrapped up in like the earthly realm, so to speak, like
right.
Like this is all that matters. I need to acquire all these things. I need to do all these things, etc., etc. And it's not to say that there isn't a place for that. Saint Seraphim of Sarov, I can't remember the exact quote, but something along the lines of, if you save yourself, you'll save thousands around you. I believe is the quote.
Yeah,
it's something like that. But that always comes to mind when I think of those things. It's like, if you do your duty and you focus on you and you're living a Christian life to the best of your ability, people will see that light shining and it'll spark some curiosity, and hopefully it'll save others ultimately. And that's one of the duties we have, living in the world, but also not being
right.
Of the world. It's definitely a weird balance.
Right. Well, and there's also the whole notion as well in the Orthodox faith that if you're going to try to evangelize an area, the first thing you do is you send hermits there, or you build a monastery there.
Yeah.
Because the first step is not to argue people into Christianity. The first step is to fight the demons that are oppressing the people that live there. right? And that doesn't mean that you have to ignore the people there while you're fighting the demons. I mean, those things obviously occur in a semi-simultaneous fashion, but it's a necessary it's a necessary thing to do.
Yep. I was just gonna share an image, but I think that one was already in the story. So yeah, going back to the life of Saint Guthlac, he he struggled right there. Yeah, he struggled as many as the Desert Fathers did, and many of the Orthodox saints have, in a very similar way, but also in a different environment, different landscape, but with the same fervor as we see many of the desert saints do. And if you haven't read any of the lives of the Desert Fathers, there's a few volumes available online. I think it's SVS, which is St. Vladimir's Press has
St. Vlad's Seminary.
Yeah, St. Vlad's Seminary, SVS, has some amazing books. There's also, for the women who are listening, there's the Desert Mothers as well. And I got my bride a book from the Desert Mothers, and they're both equally as good. There's a lot of takeaway from their lives.
If you want a fantastic akathist to pray to a fantastic modern ascetic, St. Julia, I think it's either Julia or Juliana of Murom.
Yeah.
That's, man, I came across her akathist for the first time like 6 months ago, and it was part of a deal where I kind of got roped into this. So my spiritual father, and Ian's spiritual father, does a couple of times a year. He'll set up I want to say it's like 54 or 56 hours of prayer.
50 hours of prayer.
Something to that effect. And it's, a weekend where people rotate through 1.5 or 2 hour shifts of praying a couple of akathists. And, you tap out at 3 a.m. or whenever, and then someone else shows up and does a couple of akathists, and then someone relieves them at like 3:30 or 4. And you do that for like a day and a half or 2 days or something like that. I forget precisely how long it is.
Nathan,
2 days and change.
50 hours. Can you math?
What on earth makes you think I can math?
A day or two. It's 50 hours.
It's a couple of days. But one of the ones that one of our other friends and I had was St. Julian of Murom's akathist.
Was it Joseph?
Yeah.
Shout out Joseph. We love you, brother.
And it was, I can't speak for Joseph, but it was everything I could do to make it through that akathist and maintain my composure, because it was just like, oh yeah, this servant murdered her son, and when they were going to arrest and execute him, she interceded for him and said, no, I must forgive him as Christ has forgiven me, a sinner. And this happens to like all of her kids. And you're just like, and you know the way that akathists are composed. It's beautiful poetry. It's you're reading it, and you're trying so hard to maintain composure and to be able to complete the service, and it's so hard. But I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful akathist.
I wonder if we can find that and put that in the description. I'm sorry for always saying we'll put things in the description and me not doing it.
That's his fault.
Forgive me. No. But yeah. All right, so we'll speak on a few more things that St. Guthlac went through while, living in the wilderness and choosing to live among demons and the snakes out in the wilderness. Another time, Guthlac was praying in the quiet of the night. Suddenly, a multitude of wretched spirits approached him. Their appearance was indescribably ugly. They uttered horrifying and terrible noises, and soon they filled up all of his dwelling. The demons then seized the man of God and grabbed him to the bog and dipped him into the dirty water. Then they threw him into a thicket of brambles, so his body was all bleeding. The saint prayed unceasingly and relied on the help of God. Then they beat him with iron bars and commanded him to go away from that island forever. But Guthlac did not heed their threats and pledged to remain there despite their attacks. After that, the demons on their ugly wings raised him up high into space where he felt cold and dark. Next, he felt that they threw him into hell, where there was only fire, torture, suffering, and thousands of demons. There he saw how evil spirits tormented the souls of unrepentant sinners, and they were about to start tormenting him as well. The holy man exclaimed that he was not afraid of the cursed spirits, but he was waiting only for the will of God, his only master. Suddenly the holy apostle Bartholomew appeared before him, and the demons scattered like dust. With the help of the apostle, the saint was returned to his cell, where angels sang him wondrous songs. One day in the middle of the night, demons burst into the saint's hut and set it on fire. It says with a phantom fire. The next moment, they started beating the ascetic with spear points. Guthlac immediately started singing the verses from the Psalter, and the demons vanished with their fire. That's another example of how powerful prayer or crossing yourself can be, especially when you have thoughts or visions that, whether you may perceive them as good or bad, it's always a good idea to especially ask. I've read certain things, especially with Elder Joseph or Blessed Elder Ephraim, asking the vision or the entity, for lack of better words, that appears to you to cross itself,
Right.
or pray to the Mother of God. And most times,
There's the ascetic tradition of, if you're wanting to enter a monk's cell, you knock on the door, and they say, "Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God," and you're supposed to respond, "Have mercy upon me, a sinner."
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, they know it's a demon.
Yeah. In the next case, as the man of God was reading his evening prayers, he suddenly heard the lowing and roar of wild animals. He then saw hideous creatures that resembled beasts and snakes that were drawing near him. A lion's muzzle threatened him with its fangs, then something like an enraged bull with a bear's head followed it. All of them howled and grunted very loudly. The soldier of Christ armed himself with the shield of faith and with the sign of the cross, made all of these demonic powers run away. And here we see, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, quatrefoil.
Quatrefoil. So it's 4 images.
4 images in the Crowland Abbey depicting scenes of St. Guthlac's life. It's kind of hard to make them out exactly, but still a beautiful image nonetheless. And finally, peace came, and following many years of struggle, the tempters left that site forever, and the place since then became holy. And this is what we spoke about before with, other missionaries, such as St. Patrick, which we see now the snakes trying to
Come back.
Yeah, come back. But these places that once belonged to demons or, people who are pagans, with the power of Christ, they can
Pagans
be
trying to quote unquote sanctify Glastonbury Tor with their blasphemy.
Yeah, but we see that there's a power in Christ that is unlike anything else and gives us the ability, God willing, to reclaim things. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about yesterday, is we have the chance through prayer and fasting and almsgiving and all these other gifts that we have to hopefully reclaim the state that we're in now, which is not a good one. As a reward for his tireless and fearless labors for the glory of the Lord, Guthlac was granted with great wisdom, the spirit of prophecy, clairvoyance, and ability to heal many diseases and to expel demons from possessed people. His life tells stories how Guthlac saw the future as if it were the present, saw the events that were occurring at a great distance from him, saw thoughts and intentions of hearts of many people, was a very close friend to wild animals, which we've mentioned numerous times with different saints. It seems to be a reoccurring theme. We have Saint Seraphim of Sarov and the bears, Saint Mary of Egypt with the lion in the desert. So he became, he befriended beasts, birds, and fishes. He always supported, fed, and protected them, and the nature in return served him as its master. With time, the fame of Guthlac, the extraordinary great ascetic and man full of the grace of God, spread all over Mercia and finally all England. Though the saint never left Crowland, several other ascetics and future saints became his disciples. More and more people flocked to his hermitage. The young and old, the sick and suffering, poor and rich, peasants and nobles alike, all flocked to Guthlac and received bodily and spiritual healing, good advice, and consolation. Sinners received heartfelt instructions and changed their way of life. The names of the closest disciples of Guthlac's are Sissa, Bettelin, or
It'd be
Kisa, Bettelin. Both of them were locally venerated as saints as well, Egbert and Tatooine. The story with Saint Bettelin, also known as Beckel, is remarkable. As a priest, Bettelin decided to come to Guthlac, of whom he had heard very much, and to ask his permission to stay with him forever on the island as a servant. But due to his spiritual weakness, the priest was caught by the wretched spirit and decided to kill Guthlac, thinking that in this case he would abide in his dwelling and the faithful would venerate him instead. But the vicious thoughts of men were open to Guthlac, and when Bettelin came up to him, the saint said the first Why have you, dear brother, allowed the evil spirit to conquer your mind? You have been deceived by him. Turn away from these artful designs and perfidious tricks of our common enemy. Bethlin repented and in tears promised always to listen to the saint's words, and the saint forgave him and kindly promised to guide him.
Okay, to stop you there for a moment. I'll confess that this is a terribly difficult saying / teaching for me to accept. But we see here, and this is again a theme repeated throughout various hagiographies and traditional stories and hymns in the church. If you forgive someone, by your forgiveness, their soul might be saved. Imagine what would have happened if Guthlac would have, shall we say, said something harsher to Bethlin, to Saint Bethlin. Nothing good. Right? Much evil was averted, and at least one life, one soul was saved by his kindness and his willingness to forgive even what we would classify, if we're going to use the archetype, or not the archetype, the standard of scripture. He forgave a murderer, not just any murderer, his own murderer.
His own disciple.
Who was going to murder him. Knowing what his intent was, he said, you are going to do this thing, but for the sake of your own soul, don't. And this man became a saint. And we see on the inverse of this, in a different hagiography, I can't for the life of me remember whose it is, but there are two this is, I believe, during the persecutions of Diocletian. So, there are two clergymen. One of them wrongs the other one, and it's not like, oh, he didn't show up on time for coffee or wine or whatever, right? Like, he legit wronged him. He sinned against his brother really, really badly. And when this happens, the clergyman who was wronged was arrested and was sentenced to death because he wouldn't renounce Christ. And before his execution, the other clergyman who wronged him came to repentance and realized, my God, what have I done? I need to seek the forgiveness of my brother. So he goes to him multiple times and says, brother, forgive me. I'm so sorry. I know I have offended you. I know I have wronged you. What I did to you was vile. I'm so sorry. The other clergyman wouldn't forgive him. And this repeats itself many, many times. Nothing happens.
70 times 7.
Eventually, this clergyman is taken to be executed. And the other clergyman is walking next to him in the crowd, like publicly saying, I am sorry, please forgive me. The other clergyman won't do it. They get this guy to the point where they're to the place of execution. They're about to kill him. And he sacrifices to the pagan gods and renounces his faith in Christ. And the other clergyman is martyred in his place. And the tradition of the fathers is that this happened because that clergyman didn't forgive his brother. And it's, I can't remember who the saints are, but it's if anyone knows who they are, please comment, please send us an email, because it's been years ago that I read this and I don't know who it is anymore. But forgiveness is a very powerful medicine, but also vindictiveness and an unwillingness to forgive is a knife that you put into your own heart that kills you, right? That's a thing we have to remember. And like I said, I have a really, really hard time with this.
Yeah, me too.
I may seem like a very jovial and kind person who holds no grudges, but I am a terribly vindictive person in many, many circumstances.
Yeah. Sorry.
I forgive you.
Forgive you, brother. Always, as God forgives.
Don't wait till they ask. Forgive them before they ask.
Yeah, I think that's important. Not long before Guthlac's repose, the future king, Ethelblad.
Bald.
Ethelblad is the other one, right?
I have no idea who you're talking about.
Oh, Aethel. I was thinking of Aethel.
Ethelred?
Aethelred, yeah. Ethelbald.
It's like, who the heck are you
I don't know why I
talking
think
about?
Ethelblad. Ethelbald visited him again. At that time, he was persecuted by the reigning king and abandoned by everybody. Guthlac encouraged him saying that God would help him to succeed to the throne, but for this he should be patient and indulgent to others to forgive all his enemies. Do not fear, but be steadfast, for the Lord is your helper. This phrase he used to repeat to others as well, encouraging them to put their hope in God alone in difficult situations. Notably, soon after his death, Guthlac appeared to Aethelbald in a vision and reassured him again and repeated his promise. And soon Aethelbald became king, and in gratitude for Guthlac's miraculous help, he ordered the building of a monastery on the site of the heroic spiritual battles of Guthlac. 8 days before his repose, Guthlac fell seriously ill. He started preparing for his meeting with the Creator. He fell ill in Holy Week and died on the bright Wednesday of 714. His faithful servant Bettelin was with him during the days of his sickness. On Easter Sunday, in spite of his grave illness, Guthlac offered up thanks to the Lord and served the liturgy, after which he delivered an extremely inspired sermon. The day before his demise, Guthlac gave his last instructions to Bettelin and ordered him upon his death to go to his sister's hermitage and ask for her to arrange his funeral. Right before his death, Guthlac took communion for the last time and took his last breath. At the same moment, the whole of his cell was filled with the sweetest aroma. Everything around was lit up with an unearthly light, in comparison with which the sun was dusk, and the air was filled with the sound of angelic singing. And here we see images of St. Pega's Church in Peakirk, which is in Cambridgeshire, and a stained glass image of St. Pega inside the Peakirk Church.
On the same day, Bettelin came to the hermitage of Pega, Guthlac's sister, who had lived for many years as an anchoress in a place now called Peakirk, in present-day Cambridgeshire, near the city of Peterborough. Today, this village, which means Pega's Church, has a parish church dedicated to her. The two then sailed down to Welland to Guthlac's hermitage. It was said that on the way, Pega cured a blind man in the present-day town of Wisbech in Cambridgeshire, which indicates that the sister of such a great saint was a wonder-worker as well. On their arrival in Crowland, the companions discovered the whole island and the saint's dwelling were covered with the brightest light that could only be imagined, and the fragrance around could only be compared with ambrosia and honey. Pega buried the body of her saintly brother in his chapel, and on the 3rd day of his death she inherited his personal psalter and discouraged for casting out demons, which she was later to donate to Crowland Abbey, and they were kept there as great relics. Many miracles occurred in the first year near Guthlac's grave. A year after his death had passed, Pega decided to translate her brother's body into a new coffin. The Maiden of Christ invited many clergy, and together they opened the tomb. They were so surprised that for some while they could not say a word. The body of the saint was absolutely intact. By his look and flexibility of his limbs, he resembled a sleeping man rather than a dead one, and all the garments on him were absolutely unchanged, as if he had been dressed in them on the same day. Everyone thanked God for his miracles and translated the relics into a new coffin, which was installed in a place of honor in the chapel. It was said that Pega later made a pilgrimage to Rome, where she died and was buried. In the medieval period, it was recorded that her relics rested inside an unnamed church of Rome, and there were reports of miracles from them. Her feast day is January 8th or the 21st. Veneration of St. Guthlac flourished throughout the Middle Ages. The Abbey of the Virgin Mary, St. Bartholomew, and St. Guthlac grew into a large and prosperous monastery, which every year received thousands of pilgrims who venerated their relics, with countless cases of miracles. And in the 9th century, King Wiglaf of Mercia and Archbishop Ceolnoth of Canterbury especially venerated Guthlac, who cured the latter from ague. In about 870, the pagan Danish invaders attacked Crowland Abbey and looted it, killing the holy abbot Theodore, with many monks when they were serving the divine liturgy. Since then, all of them have been venerated as martyrs. However, in the following century, the abbey was restored by the saintly abbot Thurkettle, who at the same time was its great benefactor. Soon afterwards, both the popular and liturgical veneration of Guthlac spread all over England, and petitions were offered up to him in all the dioceses of the English Church. At least 9 ancient churches were dedicated to him, and later a small Augustinian monastery in honor of Guthlac was founded in the city of Hereford. In 1136, the new translation of St. Guthlac's relics into a richly embellished shrine took place. The famous Crowland Chronicle was written by the monks of Crowland and was of considerable renown. Notably, it was one of the abbots of Crowland, John Litlington, who founded Magdalen College in Cambridge in 1428. For anyone who doesn't know, that's the college that C.S. Lewis was a professor in.
Yeah. Sabine Baring Gould?
Sure.
Pretty good.
Well, she's an Anglican, so I mean,
Yeah, an Anglican hagiographer, hymnographer, wrote that St. Guthlac is considered as the spiritual father of the University of Cambridge. John Clare dedicated one of his sonnets to Crowland Abbey. The abbey was always noted for its bells, and the first tuned peal in England was performed precisely in this abbey. Unfortunately, in 1539, by order of Henry VIII, is that right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry, I had to count real quick. Crowland Abbey had been dissolved together with many other English monasteries, as we've touched on before. And
As
the
you've
relics,
heard me whinge about many, many times.
yeah, and the relics of Guthlac were most probably destroyed. However, popular veneration for him has never ceased, and in recent times he has been venerated by Christians of different denominations living in England. The present large abbey church of Crowland is a part of the original huge monastery church. The abbey is very attractive both inside and outside, and among other things contain some medieval sculptures relating the life of Guthlac. Around Abbey, there are ancient monastic ruins and the former west facade of the Holy Monastery. And here we see an image of the Church of St. Guthlac in Ostwick, Bedfordshire.
Very Romanesque and very lovely.
Yeah.
I have nothing against Byzantine architecture, but I really like
The Old English style.
the Romanesque British style.
Yeah.
And I have no respect for what Henry VIII caused, because I believe I've related this before, but when I was over there, when I studied over there, I was at a conference, and one of the tours we went on, we were in this little town, very close to the English border, in Wales. So like you could throw a rock to the River Severn, although I mean that's a slight exaggeration. We're really close to the Severn River, and there was this beautiful little medieval church, little parish church. I mean, some of the gravestones there were so old that you could, I mean, they were so worn down you couldn't hardly read them, because they'd been there for so long. But we go inside this church, and there's a rood screen. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful church. The inside is carved. The pews and the rood screen are beautifully carved. But you go in there, and so much of that imagery and carving was defaced by Protestants under Oliver Cromwell. So, I mean, you're going in there and you're seeing these medieval British versions of Sta City, right, that are hacked to bits. They were hacked to bits 500 years ago. And I mean, it was a beautiful little church, but I mean that I think that was the angriest I've ever been looking at that. It's such a shame. I mean, I have, not to repeat myself, but I have little respect for early modern Protestants, because they truly did destroy so many beautiful things because they couldn't deal with, they couldn't, maybe I'm being uncharitable, but they did not know how to reconcile the poverty of their own beliefs with the rich beauty of their predecessors, and that breaks my heart.
Yeah. So these are some more images from the article we just read. But yeah, with that being said, we hope to continue doing more Western Saints. Me and Nathan are both
strong devotees.
Yeah.
Especially because a lot of these Western Saints are so roundly mocked in contemporary society. If you watched our Green Knight video, Saint Winifred, in a slightly more anglicized version, was a Welsh saint who is straight up mocked and degraded in that film.
Yeah, she was martyred for wanting to remain chaste, and in the movie she gets married.
Well, she was martyred. Christ resurrected her.
Yeah.
So that she could live the life that she had sworn to him. And in the movie, they just turn it into some sort of weird neo-pagan thing. And I mean, I don't want to call it blasphemy, because it's that gives the notion that we're treating Saint Gwenfrey like a deity of some kind, but in the same vein, it's wrong. That's not her life story, and it's an intentional disregard and denigration of her life, and that's just loathsome. So these saints need to be put back in the proper perspective in the Western mind, I think.
Yeah. So hopefully we can pay homage to them appropriately and inform people. And one of the reasons I like doing this is because it gives us a chance to learn more about our faith and about the saints who sometimes get overlooked, as we've mentioned, or mocked, blasphemed in different ways. And I think it's important for us to pay attention to. There's many saints out there that we'll probably never even get to, or we'll never even know the names of, but it's important. So,
like we've said, if there's a saint that you want us to talk about that we've not discussed, especially if it's I don't want to say if it's an obscure saint, if you're referring to an obscure saint, because that's not what I think we ought to do. I mean, Saint David, Saint Patrick, Saint Gwenfrey, they're not obscure saints.
no,
but
maybe here in America.
But they but if there's one that that you would like us to talk about, if who's the one that.
And also, if you become a Patreon member or something like that, and you want us to do a special hagiography reading and kind of just do our thing that we do for you, if your birthdays, especially if you're a Patreon member and your birthday's coming up, we have no problem.
Oh yeah,
doing something like that, especially for you or for a loved one, something like that.
And it's a good thing to do. One of the things that Father Josiah Trenham recommends you do, especially if you're in a parish with a full-time priest, is when your name day comes up, ask your priest to commemorate your saint in liturgy or to do a liturgy for that saint, right?
Yeah.
Up here in Flagstaff, we don't really have that opportunity because we have our priest up here for like counting the couple of hours when he sleeps. We have a priest up here for like 14 hours a week.
Yeah.
Thankfully during Holy Week, we're going to have him from Holy Wednesday through Pascha.
So we're going to have services?
We're going to have partial services.
Okay.
Glory to God. But,
Looks like I'll be calling in sick.
If you've got a priest, and if your patron saint is St. Martin of Tours, or
St. Guthlac.
Right. If there is someone who is named for St. Guthlac listening to our podcast, that is awesome. And please write in.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But, if that's the case and you haven't asked your priest to commemorate your saint during your name day or on your name day or thereabouts or do a liturgy for him or do a brief service for your saint, your patron saint, do it. We have this tremendous inheritance from the church triumphant. Let's not ignore it. I know it's super easy to do, but let's not do that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Orthodox Logos, where we shine some light on St. Guthlac, and we continue to speak on the lives of Western saints. As Nathan has said before, if you have somebody in a specific saint that you'd like us to do, please feel to reach out. We're always doing research on saints that we should talk about, but it always helps.
Me. By that he means me.
Nathan's always doing research.
I do enjoy doing research.
No, yeah. So, yeah. Anything else to cap it off? I think we're at 58 minutes, man. Let's do it. Let's make it an hour. We always talk about 30 minutes, and
you're the one that's obsessed with 30 minutes. I have long since resigned myself to somewhere between 31 minutes and 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours.
We've done like one or two that are that long.
Yeah, well, we have some stuff to talk about, that's for sure. But yeah, make sure to like, subscribe, become a Patreon member, reach out to Nathan on the Road to Paradise, keep him busy. We have some stuff planned. I'm going to be reaching out to a lot of the guests who have given me the green light to come on, and I'm going to get a calendar scheduled, and hopefully every week we can have a guest for at least the next month or two, and going forward.
Also,
more.
As far as cool news goes, and this is no pressure to Ian, but Theoretically, and hopefully, I mean, we're still kind of talking about whether or not scheduling is going to work.
59
for this.
minutes and 23 seconds.
So that gives me
Go.
25 seconds.
Go.
So there's a podcast called Texas Tolkien Talk, and they're trying to come up with a list of people to interview and have joint episodes with. And Ian and I are going to try to jump on their podcast sometime in the summer. So Ian needs to hurry up and read through Lord of the Rings.
I'll be done in a month.
I mean,
So
my record is 3 weeks, bro.
Well, hold me to it.
You're
All right.
already behind.
All right, guys.
God bless.
God bless. May the Lord protect you, and we will see you on the next episode.
Cheers.